Hey, hey, hey. Welcome to episode 130 of the Live Your Fuck Yes Life podcast and the official end to this season, which feels really, really symbolic. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And we're going to deep dive into that today. And the reason I decided to come to you solo this week is because it feels like a pretty monumental time to take a break. For those of you who've been around these parts for a while, you know that I always take about a 3-month pause between seasons of the podcast. For one, it's a lot to create content every single week of this nature, especially being on my own and doing it essentially for free outside of those of you who are part of the patron. And I'm so grateful for all of you who contribute in that space. Thank you for your time and energy and commitment to supporting this platform and all of the work that I do. It means the absolute fucking world. And also, I think it's really, really important to lead from the front and practice what you preach. And a big part of what I preach and what I teach is about honoring your body, honoring rest, and not always being so focused on the hustle, on the numbers. And, the reality of that is that's really been my life the last couple of years, even pre-pandemic times. Early on in my journey of entrepreneurship and life, I was so focused on the external as validation, as a reflection of my worthiness. And that looked like, selling out my programs, having a certain amount of reviews on my iTunes for this podcast, which if you have yet to review this, that's a beautiful way to close out this season as a thank you if you're not already part of the patron, or making a certain amount of money, or being acknowledged by others. And that's just from an entrepreneurial standpoint, not to mention, external validation of being told that I am enough, or being loved for me, and so on and so forth. In the last few years, I have found such a sense of purpose and presence and sense of self in honoring the waves of my own personal energy and slowing down and really trusting that when my gut pulls, my gut tugs, as I always say, or my intuition is pulling me to do something, that it's pulling me there for a reason. And I will also say that this is actually the first time in the entirety of me running this podcast, which I started February of 2018, that I actually don't necessarily feel the quote need for a break. In years past, every time I've taken time off in the summer, usually it's been in the summer, unless it was around my double mastectomy when I took time off of that winter. I always feel like I'm so frazzled, and if anything, this break is coming out of purpose and intention to create more presence in my day-to-day, to be more connected in person, now that is starting to become a reality thanks to being, fully vaccinated, and things starting to open up in the US. I want to experience people in reality, in person, and take some time offline to just be present with my humans and myself and nature, and see where I flow in that experience, before I come back in the fall for the next season, which is bound to be fucking incredible. So if you're new around these parts or have been here since the very beginning of season 1, I just want to take this time to say thank you for being here. And it has been, I'm getting emotional. It has been such an honor to share the tidbits and life lessons of my own experience and life, and really my own evolution with you all these last 3.5 years, and more to come because this podcast isn't going anywhere, at least not yet. I'm sure one day we'll come to an end, but I can't see that happening at least anytime soon. I wanted to come on this last episode and with all of you today, heart to heart, Amanda, to you all. And it feels really fitting that we have been in this last season of the podcast for a year. And during that time, the last episode that ended the last season was episode 100, which was the Pride episode, where I had 8 incredible individuals talk about their experience and what Pride means to them and what the queer experience has looked like for them. It's a really powerful episode. If you have not listened to it, it is so empowering, and it is one of my favorite episodes that I have ever done and put together. I'll link it in the show notes for you, but you can just scroll back to episode 100 and listen to it, especially as we are just entering Pride Month. I cannot empower you enough to listen to these voices and hear that episode. And then for the next, the next time that I popped in for the next season, start of this season, episode 101, I was coming out again. And this time I was coming out as polyamorous. And it just feels so fitting. I knew I was going to get emotional, but it feels so fitting to be closing this season down with all of you, entering Pride. Because this is the first Pride that I have been out as all of me. And I know that polyamory is not part of, being polyamorous is not a part of the LGBTQ community. But for me, it has been an expression of my fullest self, and a big part of me coming home to my sexuality has been because of my courage to step into polyamory. It is really hard for me to not intertwined to experiences for myself because they happened in tandem. And while I was coming out publicly for the first time 2 years ago to the day almost on this podcast, as bisexual, as part of the LGBTQ community, it's really, 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 really amazing to be here 2 years later and publicly stand in my truth as a queer polyamorous woman. And I know how much privilege I have by being able to do that. I know how much privilege I have to have had a marriage and relationship that was open enough, and to be married to a person who was woke enough and compassionate and kind and loving to not just want to support me in my fullest expression of myself, as I was coming out late in life and 8 years into our relationship, but who also wanted to go on the journey to polyamory as well and felt pulled in that direction too. I know how privileged I am to have had that be the foundation for me entering that space. I also acknowledge my privilege when it comes to, where I live and the color of my skin and the people in my life and my history. I had a very beautiful and supportive experience in both of my coming out journeys, despite there being some hiccups along the road. And I know that that is not and cannot be everyone's experience. And I've been talking a lot about this on TikTok, actually, the last few weeks. And there are a lot of folks on there and who are listening to this podcast right now. You might be one of those people who you're really scared to come out. You're really scared to come out as part of the, queer population, or you're really scared to come out as polyamorous, or maybe it's simply impossible given your circumstances. There is no right or wrong way to be. And only you can know the path in that space. And for those of you who are living in the closet and doing it because you feel like you have no other choice and it's not what you want for yourself, you are still so fucking valid in all of the things that you are. And I love you. Oh, I just got so emotional. I do. I love you. And I am sending you such a big fucking hug because it's really hard. It is really hard to hide. It is really hard to feel like a part of you that is such a big part of your identity, a big part of how you experience the world, experience love, experience yourself, is also not something that can be accepted by the people that are closest to you in your life. And I just want you to know that I accept you, and that there are so many other people that do too. And you don't have to hide here. That's been a big theme of my last year, 2 years, has been not hiding anymore. And for me, I talked about this in the episode about not hiding. But to me, this has been not just breaking my own patterns of hiding myself, hiding my feelings, hiding my identity, but it's also been, breaking patterns of generational trauma of hiding. So much of my family's history lives in that space, as I talk more about, my history on my mom's side of the family, and my grandma being in Auschwitz and all of that stuff, and how she went into hiding before and after the war. And I've seen those patterns continued in my family's story. And so much of the work I've been doing in therapy has been to heal that trauma and within myself. And coming out and coming into Pride Month of this year is the first time that I can truly say that I'm like fully standing in every part of me, openly and without hiding. And it feels really fucking epic and special to be talking to all of you from this place. I intentionally didn't share about my polyamory journey for a really long time publicly and on this platform and elsewhere, because I wasn't ready to be public about it. And I was also really prepared to never be ready to publicly talk about it. I felt really content with my close family and friends knowing, and didn't necessarily feel the need to share publicly. But last fall, and I was coming back from my break from the podcast, I was just feeling so compelled to share this part of me because, I've talked about this on lots of different podcast episodes that I've done about my journey with polyamory. And a lot of people in the polyamorous world identify with polyamory differently. Some people really feel like it's an action, like I am practicing polyamory and I am choosing this path and it's the right thing for me right now. And maybe one day it won't be, or maybe it will be forever. I don't know. And then there are other people who feel like it's a part of their identity, at the heart of who they are polyamorous. And it's a sense of being rather than an action. It's a deep knowing in their bones that is what makes them who they are. And that has been my experience. And that has been my experience my whole life. I didn't have the label for it, and I certainly wasn't practicing polyamory during a lot of that. But I always have had so much love in my heart to give. I always knew that, and have frankly practiced it in a platonic way for my whole life. I've had incredibly deep, and many would say romantic, relationships with my friends that felt and continue to feel incredibly important and significant in a way that a lot of people I've dated haven't felt necessarily. People that I, to the outside world, would probably look like in many ways a life partner. We just don't happen to be sleeping together, I've always lived my life that way. I've always felt pulled to love in that way. And the concept of ownership in a relationship has never resonated with my being. And I know that is not a reflection of monogamy as a whole. It's more a reflection of more toxic monogamous perspectives. But it still is the way that a lot of people see things. And I get asked all the question, like, well, all these questions all the time, like, how do you feel sharing your husband? Or, oh, you give him permission to do that? Like, these are words I hear a lot. And it always baffles me, because even in monogamy, he would spend time with friends and make that decision. And sure, like, we would check in with each other. But if I didn't always want that, maybe I wanted to spend time with him, but he really wanted to spend time with his friends, like, that was going to be what he decided to do. He's his own person. He's an autonomous being. And I am as well. And I'm not someone to be shared or owned or possessed. I am not an object. I am a whole person. And so, that will always be true for me. That, whether I am actively practicing polyamory for the rest of my life or not, that sense of self and knowing will always be true for me. And at my heart, I will always be polyamorous. It's just how I am wired. And there's no wrong answer to that. Some people are that way. Some people practice polyamory, and some people choose to never enter into that space. There is no wrong answer for how you do relationships. The only thing that I think is truly, truly the wrong path, and I use that with deep intention, that phrase, that word, is when you are actively taking steps against your inner knowing. When you are living a life that is not reflective of who you are at your core. Because when that happens, and I see it a lot in the work that I do, especially with my group coaching program and my one-on-ones, that is a lot of the unpacking we do, right? The School of Fierce Feels and Flex is my signature program. It's a 12-week program. And gosh, I always think it's 9. It's not, it's 12 weeks. It's long. And it's incredible. And so much of the work we do in that space is getting a deeper deeper self-awareness and clarity around who we are and what we want, and how to live our fullest expression of self so that we can step into our embodied fuck yes self. And that's what we do in the last month, is really start taking action in that space. And I'm wrapping up my first group of that. And there will be another one popping up in the fall. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you're following on my social, because I'll still be around on Instagram and stuff, and TikTok, I promise. And so much of that work is about really just coming home to yourself at the end of the day and living life in alignment. Because the reason we feel so much overwhelm and anxiety and angst and just disintegration with ourself, it lies in the fact that most of us are not actually living authentically. Most of us are playing a role that either society has taught us, or maybe a parent or a teacher or the media, or just the world we live in, culture as a whole, has taught us is the path. And we haven't been exposed to enough thoughts or perspectives, or known how to access our own thoughts and perspectives in a safe space in order to really uncover our fullest selves, and then be able to take action and step into spaces, whether that's with our job, our purpose, in relationships, in our sex life, and beyond, that feels in alignment with who we really are. And so that disconnect creates a lot of sadness. That disconnect creates this feeling of hopelessness and of, endless questioning, and feeling like, is this really life? And I know this not only because I teach this and I see this all the time, but because I was there too. I know this because I lived a life where on the outside, everything looked really perfect, but behind closed doors, I was battling cycles of eating disorders. I was having panic attacks. I was sobbing on the bathroom floor for years. And nobody knew, not even my husband knew for a big chunk of that. And we get really, really good at playing roles in life. And what the last couple of years have looked like for me is shedding the final layers of those roles and fully being me, fully showing up on a day-to-day basis as myself. And that has taken practice. It has taken courage, and it has taken a deep sharpening of my needs and understanding what my wants are, and getting clear on what I want to do from a boundary setting standpoint, and unpacking a lot of stuff that I had been squashing for many years. And so much of that for me has looked like stepping into my queerness and having multiple loving, intimate relationships. It has been the greatest journey to liberation. And I truly never thought that it was possible to feel this content in my body, in myself. And don't get me wrong, I have many fucking days where I feel gross, or I feel blah, or I don't feel like doing anything, and we all have our fucking days, mental health days, especially the last fucking year and a half. If we haven't had a hard mental health year and a half, like, that's amazing. Gold star, because I feel like we're all living in a weird space right now. But there is a difference for me between living in that space and having those feelings, and then also feeling this disconnect of myself and feeling like I was playing this role and not fully myself, versus now navigating those feelings and knowing how to go through them with intention, and also standing in my truth at the end of the day. because I can feel really deeply, but when I'm feeling upset or angry or frustrated or sad or apathetic, and I'm still standing in the truth of who I am, it doesn't impact my life in such a massive way like it once did. And that is, I've experienced that firsthand so many times in the last year and a half. And I believe that at the heart of that, the final puzzle pieces were coming home to myself and coming out. So it's just a really beautiful full circle moment that I'm finding myself in today. And I wanted to record this the day before it went live, so it was the freshest. And that's what I'm doing. I'm sitting here on this sunny afternoon, looking at my pride flag on the wall and feeling heaps of gratitude and so much peace that I have been able to spend the last season of this podcast with all of you, sharing the fullest expression of myself. It feels really epic. And I thank you for being here with me on the journey. Because it's pretty epic to experience on my own, but there's something about being able to share my voice and choosing to do so with all of you, and having you reach out and DM me and let me know how it's impacted your own experience. Whether that's your own experience coming out and your queerness, or in polyamory or BRCA or eating disorder recovery and beyond. I love connecting with you all. And I want to make it abundantly clear that while the podcast is going on a break for a little bit, I will always be in your corner. And whether that's just to, send a DM, I love hearing from you, whether you want to be a patron and support this podcast and all the things I do, all the content I create for free. And we can, have more of a intentional relationship via the private Facebook group for that. Or, if you're listening to this in real time, I officially have opened up the next Let's Talk Polyamory live Q&A Zoom. It's private and it's a one-night event that I run every single month. I started it last month and you all asked for more. So if you're in the polyamory or ethically non-monogamous space and you just want to be surrounded by a community of people who get it and maybe want your questions answered in less of a, one-on-one space like my peer support sessions that I offer, whether you've, done this before or not, come. It was such a great time last time. And all of the details for that, you can snag your $20 ticket on the Eventbrite link in my bio, or if you're in the show notes, or if you're on one of my socials, you can just check the link in my bio for that too. Those tickets are officially live today. And yeah, as always, I'm in your fucking corner for whatever you need. And I am just so grateful to all of you. Your voice matters. I hope that in hearing my journey and my story and being along the ride of this experience, that you have been empowered in either a small or a big way to share your own voice or get clear on what that is and what that looks like for you. And for all of you out there who are part of the LGBTQ community, I hope you remember that no matter where you are or what you're feeling along your journey, if you are in the closet, out of the closet, if you are supported in your queerness or not, that you are so loved and so valid for who you are and for the expression of self, that that you should take up space, and that I see you and I support you, and that so many other people do too, whether you feel it and know it or not. And I hope you can feel it in this moment I hope you can feel the massive hug that I am giving all of you from afar. And that whatever you feel or experience within yourself or in your own life that feels like other, there are so many people that are in that other camp too, that you don't know, you've never met, and are rooting for you every single day. And I am one of them. So yeah, thank you for this season and for being here and being in my community and my world. You Live Your Fuck Yes Lifers constantly give me so much light and make me think about so many beautiful things with your questions, and bring so much joy to my world. And I hope that I bring just a sliver of that amount of joy and thoughtfulness into yours as well. So until next time, I will see you on the flip side.